Hi, folks. Welcome to UX Leadership by Design, the podcast by and for UX design leaders. I'm your host, Mark Baldino. Podcast is and always will be brought to you by Fuzzy Math, the user experience design consultancy that brings consumer-grade UX to the enterprise. Fuzzy Math delivers award-winning digital product design and partners with internal UX teams to augment, grow, and scale their impact. Today, we are chatting with Santiago Viteri, who is the Associate Director, I want to make sure I get this right, Associate Director, UX and Digital Accessibility Standards of the U.S. Center of Excellence at Bristol-Myers Squibb. And if it sounds like Santiago has a lot on his plate, that is true. During our chat, he gives a masterclass of how to grow and sort of scale and gain credibility for UX Center of Excellence and what the various stages of the life cycle are. And Santiago was also passionate about digital accessibility and integrating it into the product design process, and covers how he thinks we're really in kind of the nascent stages of what it means to deliver products that are products and services that are accessible. So I'm super excited for you to listen. So let's go. Santiago, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good, Mark. Thank you for having me.
No. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure, to chat with me, and excited about our conversation. And I know the listeners are going to enjoy it. But maybe give everybody a quick sense of kind of background, maybe how you got into UX, and maybe your current role.
Sure. So, hello everyone. Santiago Viteri here. I lead a UX team at Bristol-Myers Squibb, the pharmaceutical in the US. I ended up there after completing my MBA. I was born and raised in Ecuador. I'm an industrial engineer by training. After I finished college, I started basically interacting with technologies since my first work. It was early 2000s. I think the internet was a sensation. And I started with a bank in basically helping them develop their cash management solution.
Okay.
So at that point in time, there were not big IT teams. It was a couple of developers, an architect, and then what we'll call the support, right? So I was the product owner for the back office, basically. So that gave me a good idea of how technology will influence processes. And it was basically on the ballpark because I was just getting my industrial engineer degree. From there, I think I had a lot of experiences merging technology into processes. And that gave me a possibility to go across Latin America, doing consultancy work, doing that, right? I also got the opportunity to work for TCS, Data Consultant Services. So I would consider myself like a good background doing PM and very strategic work. Okay. Then I moved to the US. I completed my MBA. Bristol-Myers Squibb. I think I found them on a career fair. I connect with them. They look at my resume and I think they offered me this possibility of joining a development program with them. I joined them. I completed the development program for 2 years. Amazing experience. I'm very thankful for the company for that opportunity because I was new to pharma. And through those 2 years, I learned the in and out of pharma, right? And finally, after I had to transition, the company was basically at that point in time development what will be 2020 capabilities. So in 2015, the company started of seeing, hey, how we can position ourselves to be competitive in 2020. So at that point in time, they set up a user experience center of excellence, and I joined the team, and that's how my kind of full experience in UX started, right? I got certified by Nilsson and Norman Group, and I'm currently getting a CPAC certification that is around digital accessibility.
Okay. So wait, what was the trend? So you did this development program, which is kind of a way for you to get exposure through a bunch of different parts of the organization and background. And then how did you get connected to the COE? I get that they were doing sort of vision, far out road mapping, and they built this COE, but how did that connection personally happen?
So yeah, I was basically networking to see different roles in the organization. Okay. And I remember that at that point in time, Fred Comfer, who was leading the team, I connected with him, and the way he pitched it to me and what he was, the vision for this, draw a lot of my attention, right? He were talking about a user-centric approach, be more research oriented, try to kind of test things on the run, right? Like building the plane as you fly it, potentially. I think that's the say
Yep.
here. And that caught my attention. And for all, it was the passion, right? I remember when I was interviewing the role, I had a counterpart there, Mukti Patel, and you can feel like these people were after something, right? And I think we ended up creating something great, and it has transcend, right? Now we get into a new reorg, and basically the UX function got disbanded into different, I would say, verticals.
Okay.
And the COE at the end ended up with me, and now I'm leading a team in the enterprise architecture and platforms team. So basically now I'm being able to influence our core capabilities that develop websites or portals.
Is the COE still a horizontal, or is it now verticalized in that area?
At this point, it's verticalized, but we are providing services across all the verticals because of the connections.
I'm so interested in that transition. So it was originally horizontal, and then as it got large, it needed to be more specialized. So it went into verticals. Like, what was, because I talk to people about this, clients all the time, like, should we have a more horizontal organization? Should we be vertically aligned? And it looks like there was a little bit of a transition at Bristol-Myers.
It was a transition. It was at the beginning, it was a horizontally.
Yep.
And then the new CIO decided to create verticals. So basically, we specialize and move all the teams that support a vertical like commercialization under one scope. But with the exposure, the connections, the toolkits that we have maintained I would say, the current connections, and we are providing a vertical service.
Got it. So the COE sort of got established enough that it was able to then support the verticals as needed, but it didn't need to stay at its current size. It's sort of like
you got it
systematized at that point.
You put it in much better words than I did.
No worries. You described it. I'm fascinated with those tweaks, because I think a lot of emerging nascent UX teams are trying to get to that point where they can support a lot of verticals, mostly from like a resource perspective. They don't have the resources to be vertically aligned, and so they're trying to get to that capability. But then there's this question of like, well, how much do we need to do that? How long do we have to support that? How long can we? And it looks like we got to a point that once it was systematized enough, it could be broken down and kind of, you still maintain a thread of connection of UX, but it is more sort of vertically aligned.
Correct. I think the key to that equation that you have described, Mark, for me is getting the buy-in and also acquiring the confidence of your stakeholders, right? Mm-hmm. You show up as kind of somebody internal who's doing UX and design, and they tend to go out and hire big agencies to do that work for them, right? Yeah. So you are knocking the door, trying to get a foot on the door and say, hey guys, we can do the same here, right? And potentially it will be quicker, it will be BMSified, right? That means it will kind of cater what we tend to present as a company, and it will be in-house, and that kind of know-how, those resources will stay with us. So at the beginning, we were very opportunistic. I think I got the opportunity to have a small team that I was able to kind of reach out to people, understand their needs, and start creating what we call UX engagements. And after a couple of cycles and the work that was delivered from opportunistic and basically we put in the bill, then we changed the mold that we were able to allocate resources, either UX researchers or designers to their teams, and we charge back for that. And that has been a success. And we have been that is the modus operandi, I would say, since 2 or 3 years ago, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. That process took 2 or 3 years?
No, I would say the transition from free resources or basically pro bono work to it took us 1 year, I would say.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you're building credibility within the organization. You're putting the processes in place. Can you talk a little bit more about how you and the team went about, sort of establishing credibility with folks? Because it sounds like that was the tipping point to having people pay for your services internally. So everyone's clear. You're almost running an internal agency, right? Other departments are paying the UX team as opposed to UX team giving their work for free. So you're getting other people's budget as opposed to creating your own budget, if I'm getting that corrected. But the tipping point wasn't just we had the services and process in place. It was we built enough credibility with stakeholders that they were, is it wrong to say they were willing to pay for our services? Like, how did you, correct me if I'm wrong there, and how did you go about building that credibility?
No, you are on point there, Mark, describing the journey. Like, to how we build the credibility, I think it will be I would attribute to three main things, right? One is we always try to measure. I think I'm an industry engineer, so I always have been trying to measure the overall user experience, and it's very complex, right? In the COE, we ended up creating, I would say, UX measures based on the Google Heart framework. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but we use that to measure our internal digital capabilities, in essence, our internal applications, right? With that, we get a sense of how we were kind of providing user experience, and we use that kind of as a I would say a launch pad to engage. Okay, we saw a capability that's not doing so well. Let's engage with them, right? And what we brought to the table, I think, was not just only a critique on the design, but we considered the user experience in a holistic way. So we brought the tickets, for example, that application had logged to the call center, where were the feedback for the customers. We're also bringing in feedback that we collected through surveys to support the Google Hard Framework. We also have an intranet site that we tend to upload a lot of the information that you can get support from the tool. So we get the metrics of how users were interacting with that. So I would say metrics was key and an enabler to get credibility. And on top of that, I think we follow a design thinking principle, the double diamond. Unfortunately, I would say at that point in time, design thinking was kind of the new kid on the block. Everybody was using it, and it get kind of saturated, and people stopped using it. But I think for us was a success to keep doing like we established a framework and we keep repeating the same approach over and over until I think the stakeholders realized that it was not. I think it's a whole shift mentality on them because. And sorry that I'm a little bit all over the place here, but
No, this is good.
to gain credibility, I would say first, usually what happens when you're designing something, right? On the current model, I would say you have a product owner that comes back to a development team, right? That has designers, researchers on them. And said, hey, you know what? I have spoke with my business. I know exactly what we do. And at that point in time, you start taking the requirements, right? So you note down the requirements and yeah, you have the order ready. You go back, uh, bring researchers, right? Not even researchers. At that point, you just bring a designer, start mocking up the solution, right? Come back to the product owner, show it, give the thumbs up, you start developing. And at that point in time, you say, oh, we should test it, right? It's like, yeah, great. Let's bring users to test. That is a failure. Usually those type of products, in my experience, meet the mark 50% of, like when I say 50%, the features on those projects are meet the mark 50, 60%, they are there, but always you will hear the clients like something is missing, or I thought that it will do ABC. So what we show to them is that instead of just working on the solution space, like the double diamond, we have to work on the problem space. And they need to invest time in understanding what are the real problems, right? So that was a complete shift because people come to us say, "Hey, we need to do usability testing on this," and we said, "Okay, did you to put it together? Did you connect to any real end user?" And the answer was no. Like, okay, what about any feedback that you have collected, right? Instead of just jumping to usability testing, we're kind of going through what they currently have available, and the answer was no. So what we suggest, because of the time effort between the usability testing and the survey, like why we don't just run a simple survey and get that feedback and take it from there. What do you recommend? We usually recommend SAS surveys, SAS scores to baseline it.
Yep.
And then from there is like potentially we throw an open CSAT feedback for me. If you work with me, you say, hey, let's get that feedback and try to put it on their face because there's where we get what I call the golden nuggets. That's basically users telling you what's wrong and an opportunity. So that is basically what we send out with that. We say, hey, you came to us showing this application and all these constraints, and we get the feedback, and they don't add up, they don't match, right? I will suggest you that we conduct what we call a UX diagnostic. That is basically we focus on the first diamond of the two diamond approach in the design thinking, and we work on the on the problem space. So we understand usually the environment, we understand what the stakeholders think of the environment when they put together the rules, the artifacts. Then we talk to the end users, and finally we basically analyze and create insights. So that is what we call a UX diagnostic. So that helped us pivot from this kind of, hey, give me a designer. We have this thing that we want to create to, let's have a conversation. People are willing to spend time to us helping understand the processes, the products, the UIs, right? The overall user experience, and take it from there. So it's either a feedback collection, I would tell you, it's either getting metrics, right? Or getting some type of health check of what is going on. making them aware that potentially some of their assumptions were right, but you need to double test it, and then executing the work. And key, if you ask me, is that usually when we conduct these UX engagements, we try to spend between 6 to 8 weeks with them and no more. So everything is hot.
Is that all problem focused, those 6 to 8 weeks, or is that problem?
No, it depends where they are, to be honest.
Okay.
If they have basically, if they come to us and say, hey, I have this insight, and they show that they have done the research and they need us to iterate and prototype, we are there to support them. And in those cases, I would say it varies depending on the size of the system that we are designing. But again, if you ask me, I will come to my team and say, hey, we need to be out of here in 8 weeks, right? Usually that is kind of like, okay, we'll have 2.5 months to execute it. But then from there, we come to a timeline that is constrained. And then what we do is basically we engage at the beginning, we get all their wish lists that I said. And then after I would say a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, we come back to them and say, hey, we need to scope this out, right? And then we start kind of making them aware that, hey, this will take this. This was an assumption. This is a wish. This is actually happen, or we double check with them, and from there we then repackage the engagement. But again, Mark, time is of the essence. We try to keep it short and sweet, so they see the results. Because the moment that and this is fascinating, right? We tend to bring our sponsors to some of the research sessions. So they are basically either hearing back an interview, so they don't know who was kind of providing the answers, and they're kind of, you see their eyes, right? It's like their eyes open and they nod and they start feeling the value, right? So what we do to keep them engaged, we start sourcing them like little quotes of what the research has come to us. We usually establish weekly checkpoints with them, and we surface up this information, right? And that gives you a lot of credibility to a point that is like, yeah, you got it. Just
fantastic.
After, I would say, the first 3 weeks that they saw us, like the methodology, I would say how the execution is on point, that we don't just, I would say, have an open space, say, yeah, let me take a look. We come to you with a scope, with a timeline, and we try to execute onto that. And that will give us credibility for sure. Because just to wrap it up here, man, usually with design, you never know exactly. You can estimate how it'll take, but the devil's on the details. As you finish your mockups, it's like, oh, one more tweak and one more tweak and one more tweak, right? And then suddenly things get pumped. So we need, I ask my team to kind of pencils down at a certain point. It always be an improvement. Just do a parking, like a list of things that you can then come and pitch if you think could be refined. But we need to kind of timelines.
Yeah, well, it gives the stakeholders constraints that they're going to kind of beholden to settle on their ideas, and then it actually makes planning easier. People are only going to be engaged for a certain number of time, and it's like, from a process perspective, makes a lot of sense. So that credibility is first and foremost, like gathering data and having the capabilities in place to gather those metrics, to measure the effectiveness output of the improvements to the user experience. And then switching a mindset of stakeholders from being solution focused to problem focused.
You got it.
Fantastic. That's great. I feel like
Mark, you're a great synthesizer, my friend.
I think you taught a little bit of a masterclass in, 5 minutes on I think 2 great tenets that I think a lot of design teams frankly skip. I honestly, it's an open question I have with folks, is like the metric side of it, actually measuring the impact of our work. Seems like a really hard thing for a lot of groups to get established. But if we want to have if designers want to have a seat at the quote unquote table, and they want to be reporting into the C-suite, all of those folks, most organizations are making their decisions based on metrics. They're reporting out to their teams on a quarterly basis, or the street, or to board members, investors on a quarterly basis. And if you mentioned CSAT and SUS, like if you can have this level of user satisfaction, you've put X amount of dollars of your budget into the UX team, and it drove improvements in, these areas. To me, it seems very logical, but it seems like it's such a hard thing to get started. Is BMS an analytical company? Like, was that just part of the culture, so it was easy? Did you all on the UX team have to fight for the data side of the world? Like, and I know you said you come from an engineering background, so it was part of your kind of how you approach things, but do you have to push really hard for it? How did you get that? I guess, how did you get that wheel started? Because I think a lot of people are struggling to get the measurement wheel started.
Now, this is a really good question, Mark. I would say it's because of the ecosystem that we live in. I sit in the IT organization, right? And that was something that for me was like an opener when I started my career, right? I was an industrial engineer, and then suddenly I saw technology be kind of the engine. And for me, that kind of pick up a lot of curiosity and I would say a passion to it, because through technology, you were able to solve any type of problem, right? It was human effort plus technology, and you will be there. In this IT organization, usually you have a lot of engineers, right? And I think one of the mottos is what you cannot measure, you cannot improve. So establishing metrics, assessing design was key. And you see how designers and basically product owners are pushing back because like, hey, it's a we usually get like how many users answered the survey, this type of questions challenging the data, right?
Yeah.
But we keep kind of, hey, the numbers don't lie, these are the feedback. And for me, the overall score was just an indicator or a trend. Again, I was pointing them to the information that the users provide to us. You see, so how coming to the message that, hey, let's hear what the user have to say, let's work on that, and then use this number as a reference, not as to kind of judge you if it was good or bad, but it's something that could improve always, right?
Yeah.
Gave, I would say, gave the adoption. But then also you get questions down the road like, okay, it's user experience or design is very subjective, right? How you see that is happening. So due to some efforts that we're doing, trying to improve risk minimization strategies, that's for kind of severe side effects of drugs. I have getting in touch into cognitive load. So if you ask me, it's like, hey, what it will be like a good design? I would say it has to be simple and intuitive. So it's like, what do you mean? It's like use some good Gestalt principles, and then the users have to come to your design and try to use the less cognitive load or amount of cognitive load possible to try to achieve what is meant to be done. And I was kind of, we were piloting some type, which survey we used to measure it, right? And that, if we reconnect, Mark, I'll tell you how that goes, because I think that is the next, like what we are tapping, because we need to ensure that in this case, the information that we're providing to a patient is they can consume it, right? And usually you see, yeah, it has to be at, I think it's a 4th grade level, but lecture level, but what exactly that means, right? And after that, if you ask me what is my overall kind of goal is to, after you consume this, what you can do next, right? So that next is something that I haven't seen the solution yet, but that is basically, you see how the first user experience to consume information, and then is execute something. So my team, we have been kind of getting together to see how we establish some metrics here.
Fantastic.
And yeah,
that's great. I would love to connect further. At the end, I'll give you an opportunity to list out where people can find you, and hopefully can follow along in that story as you guys tie that thread, not just of gathering data, providing information, but how you're enabling decision making specifically with patients. I do want to switch slightly topics.
sure.
Because I noticed in perusing your LinkedIn profile, you've been with the COE for a number of years, but I think in maybe 7 or 8 months ago, something new got added to your title, which was accessibility. And you mentioned a certification that you're in the process of getting. Was that addition of accessibility personal interest on you that you wanted to tackle? Was it something that Bristol-Myers is like really advocating for? Is it just the general environment we're in? Because I sometimes see accessibility experts, but maybe not the thread of like UX lead and accessibility as kind of a focus. And I take titles in big organizations. Sometimes it's like, UX designer 1 or 2, but when you're, kind of at the level you are, it means something important to the business as have accessibility in that title. So I'm kind of curious if you can talk us through that change, what it means, what's the importance of accessibility in tech in general, but also specifically you work in healthcare, so it's got added significance.
Oh, like Mark, I would say, well, let me structure my answer because I'll be a little bit all over the place. But first and foremost, like BMS have what we call core behaviors. Inclusion is one of them. I am very grateful of the company. I'm pretty sure most of you on a large company, what you have, what would they call employee affinity groups? We call people and business resource group. That is basically groups for people who want to know, like who identify themselves as Latins or Blacks or uh, Asian. So in BMS we have, I think, 6 or 7 of them. And I've been, since I joined the company, I was a member of what they call OLA, the Organization for Latino Achievement, right? And always bringing awareness in STEM programs for Latinos in Central New Jersey colleges. We have a program that connects us, and basically we are role models to them. And we come to schools and share our stories in Spanish or in English with the students and parents. I think that there are between 9th and 11th grade that they are making their decisions for high schools or colleges, right? So we try to influence that and try to orient them to STEM. That I would say that role exposed me to the other PBRGs, and we have another one that's called Dawn that is focused on people with disabilities. We have been doing some work in inclusion, but then what happened is that on 2019 or 2020, one of what we call direct to consumer websites, those are the ones who support our marketing products, got into a lawsuit. And basically, the complaint was that the user, in this case, somebody with assistive tools, was not able to consume the information there, right? And we get into a settlement, but through that settlement, we get to kind of the need of audit the website and bring it compliant to WCAG 2.1 AA standards. At that point in time, to be honest, we were like the COE was established, and we defined user experience, I recall, as a combination between usability and branding, right? I think we were there because if you go back to BMS, we were updating our brand. So it was a good moment to kind of see, hey, the brand team came, we connect with them, we offer to be brand ambassadors because we were always interacting with internal teams that were putting together portals or applications so we can influence them to adopt the brand. Now, my CIO at that point in time came back to my VP and said, hey, we need to fix this and prevent that this happens again, right? And that sent me in a journey. Basically, the VP turns back and handed this over to me. And basically, it was kind of something that if you ask me at that point in time, accessibility was potentially color contrast, like things that, yeah, and nothing like that, and nothing else, right? And we decided without having too much kind of insight, we said, okay, accessibility should be part of the equation. It's part of how people interact. So let's first define what is user experience for us. So if you come and talk to me, I would say user experience is the combination between usability and learnability, the classic kind of UX things, branding and accessibility. So we basically bring those 3 elements into kind of creating a good user experience. And then the changes in the landscape, I think after COVID, the DOJ changed their focus on enforcement. They created, I think, they called a task force to go after kind of, at this point, if I'm not wrong, they're working with online universities and COVID clinic sites, right? But they are checking their accessibility because through COVID, as you can imagine, with the lockdowns, there's a lot of people with disabilities that cannot go to the pharmacy or to the regular place to get their services. They tried to go online and they fell miserably, right? And I would say web accessibility is in their beginnings. It has been for a while. There's even rules here in the US in Section 508 that if you do work for the government, you have to have your sites accessible. But it's not ubiquitous, right? It's not something that if you go and open most of the websites, you will find some issues while you try to go through them with a screen reader. Basically, that is kind of the main assistive tool with people with disabilities, right? So from there, what happened is we decided that there was a risk, we need to mitigate it. And at my company, we basically set up controls, and those controls need a process owner. So I'm fulfilling that role, and therefore the change, like I would say, the inclusion of digital accessibility in the title. We were thinking to put something along inclusion, but it would be kind of a very, very long title, and we want to make it evident that is around digital accessibility. And from there, what we did, Mark, is basically we reach out, we bring a vendor to help us conduct an audit. The vendor give us the audit, and we say, hey, do you have experience kind of setting things up so we prevent this? And they say, yeah. So we started working with them, and I recall that at some point in time, I'd say after we were with them working, I think we worked 4 months, but at the second month, the solution that they were bringing to us was very reactive. They basically were saying, hey, on your development cycle, at the end, you put it like a check here. You check for digital accessibility, you find the issues, and you ship back to their teams, right? And they have to fix it. It didn't make sense to me because when I was reading, I realized that there were issues with digital accessibility that were not in the development space, but they need to be like troubleshoot on the design space, right? Color combinations or color palette combinations that render inaccessible text or kind of patterns on the screen. So you see how this kind of I would say very reactive model didn't work. So I start reading. I stumble upon from DQ. Actually, I would say I'm thankful that we stumbled upon them. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
What was that? What group was it?
DQ,
Okay.
like Dairy Queen. I'm not from
Not
the US, but a lot of people told me that, like, oh, Dairy Queen's like, no, 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 DQUE. They are the ones who support ActDev tools. That is an accessibility scan. I think if you talk to somebody, they will quote it. They will say, oh, we use WebAIM or ActDev tools. So they are the ones owning ActDev tools. We work, like, I engaged them. I read this book that I think was published by their CTO. It was basically like, I would say, I don't recall the title, but it's things like agile agile approach for digital accessibility, something along those lines. But basically what they were preaching was what I call a shift left approach. That was, yeah, you, in order to enable accessibility, you just not need to get a gate check at the end checking, but you need to ensure that all the people that is putting together that solution or that capability or that platform ensure that in each step they account for digital accessibility, right? So for example, a website usually has the content, you have images, you have other resources like PDFs, multimedia. So if you decided that it needs to be accessible, the website itself needs to be accessible, but the artifacts on it, like PDFs, multimedia, needs to be accessible. So it's not only giving know-how and awareness of digital accessibility to the development teams, but also to the other stakeholders that are putting together that content for them. So you see how suddenly, in order to really get accessible solutions, you need to go at the beginning of this, right? Even shifting more left and to the procurement organization and say, hey, when we procure these services, we need to ensure that the company have skills on that, or the platform that we bring in have out of the box components that are accessible, right? So you see how you finally are shifting left. So that has been the journey that we have embarked. And again, to answer your question, sorry, that was kind of quite a story there. For me, is passion. Like, I think inclusion. I'm not from here. Like, I'm an immigrant, and it was, I would say, not completely easy to get into the, I would say, working environment. And I have a lot of help, and it was help that I think uh, allowed me to be successful. So I'm trying to give it back. And with digital accessibility and the stories that you hear, and then when you start interacting with people with disabilities and the effort that they bring, the like their authenticity, how they want to be their own selves, right? And try not to get support by anybody, but troubleshoot themselves like that. Give me passion, my friend, and that's something that I kind of I have. If you ask me, it has been 2 years that I have been learning digital accessibility. I will not, yeah, it has a lot of nuances, a lot of basically HTML code, ARIA code, but beyond that, then you really want to shift left, and then when you're designing, you change completely your optics, right? It's like, oh my god, one of the tips, if you don't mind, I can leave here is when you want to make accessible solutions, try to convey the information in two ways, right? And usually we do a terrific job on multimedia. We tend to put captioning in them, even audio description, or there's a transcript available. I don't know if you live and live with Teams, but Teams have now live captioning. You have the transcript, but usually I would say we fall short in terms of charts and graphics, right? Think of people who are colorblind. We use a lot of color to convey values, right? On our charts, on our graphs, and that is not accessible, right? So as a designer, you need to kind of figure out how I make them accessible, right? And how these beautiful elements that have colors and a nice legend or like they need to kind of be, I would say, thrown away and brought something that I I would say it's not so appealing to your eyes because it has more things there. But at the end, if you think of the experience, you are enabling people to consume that, right? So your artifact will be fulfilling their purpose, right? With this extra, I would say, as the design was, you will say it's a lot more saturated, but it's needed.
Yep. Fantastic. Well, it's wonderful to hear your journey and where it's taken you now. And what I would maybe say is like a new passion for accessibility is really incredible. I like the idea of people shifting left, and not just thinking there's a code scan we need to do at the end of this to make sure a screen reader can get through it. But it is a mentality change within organizations. It's a process change. It starts at the very beginning, and people say research isn't a phase. Research is something you should do the entire way. I think you can make the same analogy to say like accessibility isn't just a phase or a checkbox. Hey, we're going to do a visual, check to make sure contrast ratio is on, and we're going to do a tech check at the end with code. But that it should be a mentality that's sort of enabled and part of your process throughout.
Correct. I think I was on a webinar that was accessibility is not a checklist, and that was very real. And that is something that I would say, based on my journey, that's something that you have to demystify, right? Because the moment you come to somebody in IT, usually in the development space, well, yeah, give me a checklist of what I need to fulfill, right? Give me your guidelines. It's like, yeah, I can give it to you, but then you like here you need to make an extra effort to understand what is the user experience that you want to convey, right? Because we have found websites that is basically print and fill. Usually you have stumbled upon those resources that print and fill, right?
Yeah.
And I recall my designers were like, this is not inclusive at all. It's like, oh yeah, you're right.
Right.
And we went into a rabbit hole of trying to fix that PDF. I recall, like, hey, it needs to be accessible, like down to the task, without just follow our same, I would say, mantra and said, hey, let's understand the real problem here and then jump into solution. We jumped right away to solution. I recall the first time, like, hey, we need to remediate that PDF, and PDF remediation is a madness. I don't know, like Mark, if you had been exposed, but
Not in a while.
is one of the, I would say, one of the biggest efforts. Like it's more complicated than remediate a website. I would say a simple website, if it's not transactional, it's much more complicated. So I would say we spent easily like 3 weeks effort of a resource there, right? Just remediating to then realize that, oh, the call out in the website needs to change. And we need to say like download and fill and upload again, those little tweaks. And that is this whole shift left mentality. Right. And a lot of awareness, Mark, a lot of awareness.
Right. The checklist wouldn't have got you there.
No,
right?
At all.
It would have passed that checklist.
You will pass the checklist with kind of high scores, but then you will put it on production. The patient will come and it's like, okay, I don't know. Like I use my keyboard. I don't like, I'm not sighted. I cannot handwrite, right? So, and that, Mark, just to wrap it up, I think is something that I will leave here for designers and teams, like awareness. That is, I think, everybody's a designer. I will usually start conversations like that with my stakeholders. Say, hey, yeah, the moment that you wake up, you go to your closet, you pick your clothes, you're designing for yourself, right? You're designing how you will look like. People who had figured it out, I don't know if you have read it, but I think Einstein was the one who had like one color or already like the same suit every time, so he doesn't have to invest energy on that. But you see how you're investing energy, you're making an effort to kind of pick and choose your color. So everybody's a designer. And also nowadays software has made design, I would say, universal, right? You come to any type of software and you can drag and drop things and you can put together a UI, right? Yep. I have the opportunity to work with very smart people that come to us and say, hey, I can code it for you. I can do it for you, right? I was like, yeah, but that's why people go to college. I was saying, get educated, because design is a science. For me, it's an art. It's an art with a science, right? Yep. And therefore, you need to be able to not only present the UI, but explain why you make certain design choices, right? And articulate them some what I tell my team, fancy words that will give you credibility, right? So I point them to Gestalt principles. I am a big fan of Jablonski. I don't know if you have read them, Laws of UX. We have their cards. Every time we need to kind of sell, I would say, you need to sell the car, go get a couple of cards, find the ones that apply to you, go and pitch them to the client, right? Therefore, there is not like somebody saying, hey, yeah, this looks nice, and they didn't take too much time. But you can say they didn't take too much time because we use Gestures principles to bring the information closer. We put the CTA next to their line of sight. So, you just don't, you need to walk them through your design decisions with some, I would say, criteria that give you credibility.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. I think it's a good thread or tie into where we started around establishing credibility. Appreciate you walking us through the journey of the COE and your personal journey into your new passion. Well, now 2 years, so not that new, but renewed passion in sort of accessibility. And then that sense of how designers need to communicate their designs. It's not just about the designs, how you communicate it and sort of establishing credibility. So I really appreciate it. I know the listeners are going to really appreciate your journey and thoughts. As I said in the middle there, you gave a little masterclass on how to organize a COE within a and get success within of a COE within a large organization. People want to find you, LinkedIn, Twitter, any URLs people can hit?
Oh yeah, I'm not big in Twitter, I would say. Not big on social media. I need to pick up my game, I think, on LinkedIn, but you can find me on LinkedIn. My first name and last name. It's awesome. Where you can find me. Probably my picture is there. Great. So yeah, feel free to reach out. And then I think I can give you my Gmail if that's we can put it on.
Yeah, I can put it in when we post. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn and your email address if people want to reach out. Appreciate you including that information.
Oh, definitely, my friend. Yeah, I'm more than glad to connect.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and ideas and sharing your process and thoughts. I really appreciated it. Your passion for design and accessibility comes out, so much appreciated.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mark. Looking forward to connect again to see how that little experiment worked out. I think for the designers, researchers out there, guys, try always to be inquisitive. Try always be kind of to bring something new to the game. That is, I think, our role as researchers or designers. Try to test things out. Don't lose that, even if you don't get buy-in, but just keep coming back until you will get buy-in. And if you find the right people, try to use them as your poster child of good work, and then use them to kind of elevate the message, and improve, I would say, the user experience, because that is our job here, right? To ensure that everybody could have the same experience when they are interacting with our products or what we have created.
Fantastic. Thanks for ending on a little bit more advice for our listeners. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Take care.
You too. Have a great day, guys.